Hi there, welcome to Design to Deploy. My name is Eric Troutman and I'm an instructor with the Viking Code School. So basically today we'll be walking through the creation of a real application from beginning to end, and you'll get a chance to see all kinds of stuff that hopefully you haven't seen before. Basically the goal for today is we're going to show off a real web development workflow from beginning to end, which is really something that a lot of beginners haven't had a chance to take a look at before. I know when I was learning, I had no idea what actually happened to create all these web applications around me, even though I knew that it was something that seemed really cool and it was something that I wanted to learn how to do. So the goal for today is to give you a chance to see all the things that are going on when a developer is creating an application. This is just one type of workflow. Obviously there are many different ones for many different people, but hopefully this is going to help you get that sort of first idea of what goes on behind the curtain when these applications are being created. Another goal is to get you exposed to some of the tools that we're going to be using later on in the course. It's not designed, this demo isn't actually designed to teach you how to use all of these tools. It's really just to give you exposure to them. So it's emphatically not, you emphatically do not need to learn how to code by watching this. I wouldn't waste too much brain power getting into the specifics and trying to follow along with every little thing that I do, but just try to kind of absorb it as it goes through and get an idea of what it is that you'll be learning down the road and what it is that real developers do. Alright, so what are we going to build today? This is Simple Blog. It's the easiest way for groups to blog that there ever was. And basically it's a very straightforward blogging application. You can post, you can leave comments, and that's about it. If we could take a look at it in the browser here, you'll see that it basically lists posts by latest posts first. You can easily create posts by specifying your name, posting in some text, and there you go. That's my post. I can also leave a comment. I'll also specify my name, leave a comment, make it shorter, and there's our comment. Takes us back to the home page. So in future slides we'll talk about why exactly we're building this application, but basically it's, as I said before, it's going to help you see the whole workflow from zero to finish of how an application is created, and it's not terribly complex, so we're not going to get too lost in the nitty-gritty. Basically this is the kind of workflow that you might take if you're building an application for yourself, something small, maybe your personal website, something like that, or even for a client where you're doing everything on your own. Maybe you're doing some consulting or things like that, and you just need to kind of organize your process and organize your thoughts so that you don't get lost down a whole bunch of wrong turns and things like that. If you're part of a larger team, a lot of the components of this process might be divvied up into multiple roles, so you might actually only be handling one of these roles, for instance like the back-end engineer or the front-end engineer, or even the designer. However, the process overall wouldn't usually be that different. This is sort of a hybrid of what's called an agile workflow, which is used by teams in a lot of cutting-edge tech companies these days to really move things forward at an aggressive pace. This isn't exactly the same, but it definitely sets you up to learn something that's being applied in real team-based settings. So ultimately, in the end of the day, this is going to help you out regardless pretty much of what your goal is, and as we said from the beginning, you should be able to find it useful regardless. Alright, so now we're going to cover how it works. So basically there's a series of steps. There's 4 major steps, and then within the third step you'll see that there's several individual steps. Basically where we start every time is with new user needs. I mean, you can't build an application of any kind of success without understanding and working with your users to produce that application. That's something that maybe developers don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about, but especially if you're someone who's interested in freelancing or working with, maybe building your own startup, that becomes really relevant. And ideally this is something that you've already had some familiarity with, because we're not going to spend a whole lot of time covering it, but it certainly is the first step towards creating any kind of application, is actually coming up with what does that application actually need to include to serve the needs of the people who are going to use it. The second step is then to turn those needs into a functional mock-up of the site. And so basically what a mock-up is it's just a very simple sort of prototype, or not a prototype, but it's just a very simple outline of what the site's going to look like. And then the third step is taking that large mock-up, that sort of that look, big picture look at the site, and then chopping it up into little bite-sized stories, which each story is basically designed to be sort of a modular piece of work that can be done on the site. So what that would mean is, taking a little tiny piece of the mock-up, say for instance, just one individual little feature, or a widget or a button, and breaking that out, and then working on that specifically. Once the mockup is broken into those specific stories, which I will go over a little bit later, because I know that wasn't the clearest explanation in the world, but for each story, that's where the actual coding comes in. So for each story, you're going to need to spend some time and basically whiteboard it, and basically write it up and figure out, as the first step, what is the actual data architecture required to make the story happen, right? Because if you have a form, let's say on your website, that form is going to require that you store data somehow, and so you need to think about specifically what are the relationships between the pieces of data that you need to store, and then how are you going to turn those into basically back-end code for your website. So thinking through that data architecture and whiteboarding that site is actually one of the most crucial steps, because there's nothing quite so disheartening as getting halfway through a story or a feature or a project, and then realizing that you kind of screwed up the data architecture, and half of what you've done is not really relevant, and you have to go back and redo it. So spending some time on that very first step and really thinking through the problem and breaking it apart is an incredibly valuable tool. And so once you've kind of parsed out the data architecture and you've implemented the data architecture, so you've set up your database the way that it needs to support the story that you're doing, then it comes time to actually build out the back end. So I mean, we kind of start low, kind of start deep in the depths, and then work our way up towards the browser. And so, once we have that data architecture, then we build out the back end of the story. So we build out all the guts on the server side. And once we've finished doing that, then we move towards the front end and build out the HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript and things like that are actually ultimately going to make that feature look the way that it's supposed to for the user. And so we basically have a cycle where we do that for each and every one of those stories in order. And then, by the time we're finished with that, then we actually have ourselves a full application, which we can, ideally, we have already been working with our clients and our users to make sure that that's exactly what they are looking for, and that we've prioritized everything properly. But then, even at that point at the very end, we're still going to want to go back to them and make sure that everything is fine, iterate as necessary, refactor, clean up our code, and then ship the site to production. So this is more of a visual way of looking at the exact same thing. So we kind of cascade down. We start with the user needs up at the top. And then we build the mockup from the needs. We break that mockup apart into individual stories that we can code, and then we go through the cycle of coding up those stories and finally end up shipping the application. So the way that breaks out for each individual story, as I said, it's kind of, you can see on the left that it kind of faded out those other three steps. The first three steps are kind of more about the whole application. But then what you're really interested in, I'm sure, is how do you turn each individual little piece, each individual story that we're going to be working on into actual code. And so, as I said, we kind of start with a mockup, which is this high-level idea of what this story is going to look like, and then we dive way down in the depths and we say, okay, in order to make that mockup happen, what is the data architecture that's needed to support that? And then how can we implement that? And so once that's been implemented, then you bubble up and you go, okay, now I'm going to build out all the server-side code to support that data. And then you bubble up and you go, okay, I need to build out all the front-end code on the client side to support all the back-end stuff. And then you'll always, at the end of each story, you'll always refactor your code, because you've probably made a lot of really crappy code, and you never really know what you can save, or what code that you can simplify and delete and things like that until you've actually really gotten to the end. So that's always a crucial step. So let's get started. So what we're going to do now is take all of the things that we just took a look at, all of those concepts, and apply them to the application that we're about to build. And so the first of these steps is figuring out the user needs, like we were talking about. So in this situation, let's say that we have a few friends, Joe, Jane, and Sarah, and they're old school bloggers. So they're not really into all this new stuff with the fancy interfaces and high degree of features. They remember the old days when blogging was brand new, and they've been feeling pretty nostalgic about it. So they want something a lot simpler than today's tools. So for us, what we've done is we've had this conversation, we've talked to them, and we figured out we've kind of narrowed down their needs. And all they really want is the ability to create posts, the ability to comment on posts, and they don't care about anything like logins or like they're a small community of friends. It's all on our system. They don't care if people say that they posted as someone else. They just want something really simple. So that's great, because that's exactly what we're trying to build right here. So our second step is going to be taking those needs that we just talked about, those very simple, but basically those top two needs. I need to post and I need to comment, and we're going to turn them into a mock-up. So let's say we've kind of brainstormed around, we've whiteboarded a bunch of things, and we've tested with our users, showing them all these whiteboarded things, and now we're at the point where we feel pretty comfortable with the way that things look, and so let's jump over and take a look at that. So the mockup is actually done in Balsamiq mockups, which is which you can see here on my screen. It's a very straightforward mockup tool. It's used by all kinds of people in the industry, and they have a free trial, so you should definitely go check it out. It's the one that I default to all the time when I'm creating mockups for things. And so basically what we've done is we've talked to our friends, and we've come up with this mockup as kind of the definitive thing that they ultimately said, you know what, that looks great, I want that. And as you can see, as we demonstrated originally when we first started, you can create posts. We've got all the listing of all the latest posts, and over here this is basically the new comment window. And you don't have to put them side by side. It's just such a simple site that I did that. And you can see, you create a comment on the right over here, and on the left, they've just got an image of the post itself. So this could have been done all kinds of different ways. This is just the way that we're going to do it right here. Okay, so the next step that we have to go through is actually taking that mockup, which which represents the entire site, and break it up into little bite-sized chunks. And those bite-sized chunks are based around specific user paths or user needs. In this case, there are 3 major paths that we've kind of pulled out. And the format that you use to express these stories is you want to identify who's the person who's being affected. You want to know what the actual feature or story that the thing that you're building is, and then why. And the why is really important, especially when you work in a larger team, because you might be handing off work, and things can get lost in translation. So it's really important when judgment calls have to be made that everyone's on the same page as to exactly why you're building the thing that you're building. So in this case, we have three stories basically. As an author, I want to be able to publish posts on the site so that I can put my thoughts out on the web. That's one. As a reader, I want to be able to easily view the most recent posts so that I can stay up to date. And finally, as a reader, I want to be able to write a comment on that post so that I can offer my thoughts on a post. So we've broken up, our site has only 3 stories. They're very simple. There's nothing terribly special about that. But one thing to note is each of those stories is something that can be kind of, it stands on its own. And you'll kind of see how that works once we dive into the one that we're actually going to be working on here. And then the final step is to prioritize the stories, because the thing is, when you're working on a real project, you can come up with a list of 12 or more stories that that all need to be done. I mean, you can have a very complicated site that when it's finally broken up into pieces, you say, all right, well, we only have so many hours to spend on this thing. We need to figure out which stories are crucial, which stories are nice to have, and which stories are maybes, and prioritize accordingly, and then just kind of march through them as aggressively as we can. In our case, we've basically started by saying the first 2 stories, and actually, you know what? Why don't I jump into Pivotal Tracker? So Pivotal Tracker is a really simple, straightforward tool that we use to keep track of stories. And so you can see it here right now. There's an update here, and so I'm offline and not doing so well, but hopefully this will work. And I basically put the 3 stories in the tracker, and so the tracker just keeps track of, what are you still waiting to work on, and then what are you what are you currently working on, and what have you already finished. So right now we have 3 stories sitting in the tracker, and each story under the description is going to have that exact same thing that we were just looking at. As a something, I want to something so that I can do something else. And there's some fields that you can fill out. One of the ones that you might pay attention to is this points scale, which basically ultimately is sort of a determination of how much work is going to be required to produce that story. And based on that, you can kind of relatively determine how many stories can you do in a given period of time. Once you get kind of good at following yourself over time and seeing, okay, well, how many of these points can you do over a period of, say, 2 weeks, and then you can start to predict how long things are going to take. But for our case, we've just got 3 simple stories. We've kind of said that the first one and the third one are probably the most difficult, or slightly more difficult than the middle one. But ultimately, like that, if you want to go to that level, you're welcome to or not. But it's really the important thing here is just that we're using this idea of stories to kind of keep track of the little bite-sized pieces of work that we've broken off. And so the very first story that we've done, I've just picked it up, is going to be show most recent posts. And we'll take it back. That's actually not the one that we're going to be working on. So we've just checked out the pivotal tracker. So what we're going to do here is skip ahead. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check this off. I'm going to say, oh well, I've already enabled the website to show the most recent posts. I've already enabled the site to create a new post. All right, so right now we've skipped ahead, and so what you'll see if you're sharp here is you'll notice that there's a couple things missing from this site. So this is the site on my development computer, and as I said, this is kind of assuming that we've already finished two of these stories already. So we're able to show the most recent post, and we're able to create a new post, but we're not yet able to comment on posts. And the reason for doing this is because, I mean, it's going to take a fair bit of time to work through just one story, so I don't want to spend, I don't want to waste hours of time explaining what we could do with just one story. So we've kind of skipped ahead. So we have some functionality. This is Eric, this is a test post, lorem ipsum, etc. So we can create a post, and that's pretty much it. So we want to add more functionality to this. And so what we're going to do in the next couple of slides here, in the next couple of things here, is we're going to skip ahead. So we're going to tackle that third story, where as a reader, I want to be able to write a comment on a post so that I can offer my thoughts on that post. And so basically the first part, if we go all the way back up to, all the way up here, to that, actually let's go all the way up to here. So this was back kind of when we were explaining how things worked. Is remember, we've gotten everything into bite-sized stories. We've already completed several of these stories, but now what we need to do is we need to kind of bubble up from the bottom. We need to start with the architecture, go to the back end, and up to the front end. So we already know based on the mock-up what the end result is supposed to look like. I mean, we can jump over here into Balsamic, and we can see that this is what it's going to look like, what the comment creation page is going to look like, as well as what the additions to the original page are going to look like. For instance, this leave a comment link right here. So what we need to do now is, let's just get back up here, is we need to start at that bottom point, the first step, which is determine the data needs. And so again, like, your job as a developer is really gonna, this is where you're gonna really have to start feeling like a developer. I mean, working through mockups and things like that are fun, and it really gives you like a sense of what the goal is ultimately. But now you need to start thinking about data. And so in our case right now, oops, if I can just go back up here. In our case right now, so we need to kind of think things through. So like, obviously I don't have a whiteboard in front of me, but hopefully this will suffice. And so we've kind of determined, like, okay, so if we're gonna comment on posts, like what does that involve? Well, we know that means that we need to somehow save the comments, or we need to persist them to some sort of database. The comments also obviously need to have some sort of information associated with them. And in this case, based on the mockup, we know that each comment is going to need to have some sort of author. It's going to need to have the content of that comment, and then based on the relationship that we're about to talk about, it's also going to need a link back to its parent's post. And so you can see kind of off to the right here, just kind of a little diagram of a whiteboarding. Let's say we built this out of markers, which by the way is awesome. I love whiteboards, so you should absolutely use them as much as possible. Although pencil and paper, it doesn't matter, it all works. And we've kind of said, okay, like each comment object is going to need these fields: the content, the author, and the post ID. And then you also kind of want to specify out like what exactly are those fields, and how, and then any restraints that are going to be on those fields. So for instance, in this case, let's say that the content should be 140 characters max. I think maybe I changed that a little bit later to maybe a little longer, because that's pretty short. But the author's name shouldn't be any more than 20 characters, and those are going to be strings, whereas the post ID can just be an integer. And so getting to that post ID, this is actually one of the as important as this idea of like, okay, how do you persist a specific object like a comment, you also need to think about your data relationships. And in this case, like we know that a comment has to somehow be associated with a post, because otherwise they're just kind of floating out there and it doesn't really matter what you commented on. And so the way that we do that is we think about, well, a single post can actually have multiple comments associated with it. And that becomes an important relationship, because the way that you model that relationship, it changes depending on what that relationship is. For instance, for whatever reason, let's say you could associate a single comment with multiple posts as well. That definitely changes the way that you'd have to implement this data structure. For us, it's fairly straightforward that a comment is basically, you could think of it as being kind of owned by the post. It belongs to a post. And a post has many comments. And so in order to do that, each comment is going to actually need to link back some sort of, it's going to need to contain the post ID, the actual ID field that uniquely identifies that post, so that we can go back and link the two of them. So that's basically us working through kind of all the data at the bottom. And this is a very important step, because it helps you kind of strategize how you're going to actually implement this stuff. Okay, so now we're actually going to get into some code. So basically everything up until now has been completely stack agnostic. It doesn't really matter what language you're coding in. Those are all steps that are going to be helpful for you. From now on, we're actually going to be coding in Ruby and Rails. And that would be Ruby and Ruby on Rails, because Rails is written in Ruby. So that's our stack, and so you're going to get a chance to see all kinds of Ruby code here. Most of it probably won't make a whole lot of sense, and we might even fast forward through it in editing, depending how long it takes. But for now, let's just get started. We know the data infrastructure, the data architecture that we need to implement. And so let's just go do it using some Rails. So again, this is more designed to be a high level overview, so you don't need to absorb everything. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create a model. So we've got, let me just check my status here. Okay, so check the status in my version control system. Clear that out, that's fine. Let's create a model. Rails generate model. Let's call it comment. And let's give it a couple of fields here like we talked about. We have author, which is a string. We have content, which is actually going to be, well, we're going to keep it fairly, let's make it text. And we've also got the post ID, which is going to be an integer. So we'll generate that. Just double check to make sure that everything looks good with the migration. Got create comments migration that has now been created. We got author, comments, and posts. Great. So that's what Rails magic does. And so we'll do a rake db migrate to actually turn that migration into a database table. So now we have a database table, and that is the data. We're good to go. So now comes the story part 2. So from now on, basically, we're going to be working out of our text editor. And so at this point, we have our data figured out. I mean, honestly, most of the issue with that whole first step of figuring out what your data needs are and what your data architecture is really more of the conceptual step of just kind of nailing it all down. And this is a pretty straightforward story, but not all of them are, and so sometimes that takes a fair bit of work. But now we're past that, so now it's time to just kind of get going with it. So we've got our database table, we've got our comments, and so now what we need to do is build out, just start building out the real back end of the story. And so what that back end is going to require is we have a model in Rails. And so we've actually already created that model using that generator that we just looked at. And so we've got the comment reviewed model. So the first thing we're going to do is, based on what we said, we specified that we wanted the comment content to be a certain maximum length, as well as the author, because we don't want people to put in a billion characters worth of comment. So I've actually already done this with the post, and as you can see, we have a maximum right now of 20 and 400. I'm just going to hang on to those instead of what was actually specified in the slide. And so basically this is just setting up validations, which makes it so that the database will not accept anything, or at least Rails won't persist to the database anything that violates these constraints. So we can't have an author that's any greater than 20 characters long. We can't have comment content that's any longer than 400 characters long. And so then the other thing that we have to do is specify that relationship that we were talking about between the post and the comments. And so as we said before, a comment actually sort of belongs to a post. And then on the post side, a post actually has many comments. And so that's actually enough. That's enough for Rails to work with, and you'll be able to see that working in the future. And frankly, at this point, this is, we're doing pretty good. I mean, Rails just gave us a whole lot of stuff with just those 3 lines of code that we normally would take a whole lot more space to deal with. And so we're going to start bubbling our way more towards the front end. And then the first thing that we need to do is actually create a comment controller. So let's do that. So let's do a Rails generate controller, and we'll call it a comments controller. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff, I mean, you can look through, there's a whole bunch of stuff that just got created. Again, don't worry about it, you'll learn it. So what we're going to do is our comments controller, we're going to open that up. Okay, so why don't we create our new action for the comments controller, and let's send it a comment. So let's find the comment based on what we're going to get from params, which is going to be an ID. We'll send that out. So we're going to need to create a route for that as well. So that route is actually going to need to go inside of posts route, because we want our URL structure to be something to the effect of posts. Oops, let me, this is just a comment. Let's do an EG. So it's going to be something like posts 1, so the first post, post 1, comments new. So that'll be pretty much the structure that we're gunning for here. So we're going to set up a resources comments with only a new action for now. So let's see what happens if we go on our site and we go to, let me just refresh it. So we have our server running, so let's go to posts. Well, actually, I got to figure out what the ID of this post is. So just 1 second here. We'll go to the terminal. We'll jump into the console, which we can use to actually talk to our database. And so let's ask our database, what was our last post? And the ID is 47, so I need to actually go and go to posts 47, comments new. All right, so couldn't find a comment without an ID. Well, that was silly. I shouldn't have done that. Of course, we're not going to find a comment. It's comment new. That was just a brain fart right there. So we're just going to pass it a new comment. Okay, so this is better. So missing template, that's fine. That's just Rails telling us that it doesn't actually have a view right now set up as to run off of the new. So what we need to do is create a view under the comments file. So let's create a new one. And we're going to call this view.html.arb. So now let's just, for the sake of it, for the heck of it, say hi comment Okay, so we're going to go check that out in the browser. There we go, we've got a comment. All right. So obviously this isn't the way it should look. We should have it look a lot more like this, with the post on the left and the comment on the right. And so if you'll notice, of course, this looks a whole lot like this original one, and so we can basically reuse a whole lot of code. So what I'm going to do is I want the new comment to look a whole lot like the index page for the posts. So why don't we just grab all the posts. Let's go back to, where are we, new, just replace all of that, except where it says posts. Let's just go right down the list and call it comments. Say latest comments. All right, so what do we have here? So what we actually need to do, so I mean, this isn't quite as straightforward. So this will be create a comment, latest. So this isn't actually supposed to say latest posts either. What this is supposed to say is your selected post. And so your selected post, and of course I'm making mistakes as usual, so we're somehow going to need to pass forward what that post is going to be. And that goes back to our controller. I've already made plenty of mistakes. The post equals post dot, that's what I was really thinking before. And we'll call that post ID, because I know that's the way that it's going to come in. And so we'll go back out here and have it start yelling at us, but not quite as much as it was before. So what do we have? So we're going to render the post. We now should have a post. We're going to create a comment. Of course, we don't have a new post form. We need a new comment form instead. And again, we could reuse some stuff, but I'm not going to do that right now just because I'm a little bit lazy. That would be something I would do more during the refactoring phase than immediately right off the bat. Okay, so what we need is a new partial called new comment form. So we'll create a new one, we'll save it, new comment form. Okay, so let's grab the new post form. Just copy that whole thing that we've already created. We'll go under, where's that new comment form? Where are you hiding there? There you are. And we'll replace all the posts with comment. Come on now, please expand. All right, let's just make that small. Okay, so now we have a comment form, so we should be passing it a comment, which we are, which is the comment that we've just created. So it's that brand new comment that we just sent out here from our controller. It's being sent to our new action, and now we're passing it again forward into the partial, just because we want to save some space. And we're gonna, let's see if this is going to render. What are the odds that we don't have any errors right off the bat? Because again, comments have all the same fields as posts, so we're actually reusing a whole lot of class. We need a whole lot of code. So we need an author field, we need a content field, and of course we need a submit button. So let's just see what happens if we display this. Okay, undefined method comments path. Aha. Okay, so what we're going to need to do with that is what it's trying to do is Rails is trying to be smart with a form for method, and it's trying to give us the path for it. Okay, so there's a couple things that we can do here. All right, so I'm going to go and check out our routes. So let me go back here, let's do a rake routes and see what we already have. So it's yelling at us because it can't find a comments path. So it's looking for a comments index path, which isn't quite correct, which isn't really what we want. Well, no, that's not true. What it's trying to do is figure out where to send that new comment to. So what we really want is we want it to send that comment over somewhere that there would be a create action in the comments controller. So we don't currently have a create action even specified in our routes. So let's go do that. So let's do new and create. And now let's see what happens. We have in our rake routes, we should have a create show up. Okay, so we have a create route for the comments, so we should be able to pull up the post properly. Or sorry, the comments path. Okay, well, apparently I'm wrong. So we still have an undefined method comments path. All right, well, give me just 1 second to try and figure this out. Okay, so why don't we go and so do a rake routes. Do a rake routes, and the place that we need to send it to is we need to send it here because we're sending it to the comments create method, which means that we need to set a very special URL, and so it's probably just confused by that. So what we're going to do is we're going to send it we're going to specify the URL that we want that thing to get sent to. And so if we do that, we're sending it to the post comments path like we just saw with the rake routes, the post comments path, and we actually need to send it the post ID. So the post would be the post that comment belongs to. Now it's going to get mad at us right now because it doesn't have an ID for a null class. And of course the reason for that is that the comment doesn't actually have a post. But what we can do, if we switch these two lines, is we can set the comment using the post. So we do post.comments.new. And so that will actually, even though the comment hasn't been saved yet, it's going to give it the ID of the post. So now we won't have this ID for null class issue. Boom. All right. So now we have a post that we've selected, and we have a new comment form sitting right here. That's pretty cool. So why don't I just go back so we have a more fulfilling looking comment, or more fulfilling looking post. Okay, so the next step that we have to do is we need to, actually why don't we go back so that we can keep jumping around. Why don't we just quickly set up the links down at the bottom here. Because remember there's in the mockup you can see that there's a link, go back to home page. So this one's pretty straightforward. So in our new post form, we're just going to go down here. We are going to set up a div. Equals call it what would you call it? Backlink. Now I'm just being pretty hacky about things, but link to back to home page. Oops, root URL. Let's use a path and close our div. And so down here we can search for CSS. So why don't we go into our posts.css and inside of our comments, why don't we set up backlink to have text align, because we want to send it on the right side. We'll do text align. Oh, sorry, it's center. Let's do text align center and see how that looks. Well, we are way the heck over there off in left field, so obviously it's not meant to go all the way out there, which of course it's not. To go right after the post gets rendered. There we go. So now we need to display it as a block. Otherwise, of course, it can't center within it because it doesn't have a box size. So we'll display it as a block. And what's the problem here? Whoops. Well, the link works. My right click does not. Let's take a look in our inspector. All right. Div class back-link inside the comments, backlink. Why do you hate us? Oh. Well, of course. Let me try this out. Although, for some reason, I'm thinking that should have worked anyways. Yeah. It's also not registering the style. So let's see, where is this going to come from? It's inside of comments. But right now this is labeled as inside of posts, so we've just got a scoping issue, that's all. So for now, that should work just dandy. Okay, good. We've got it fixed up. So now we have to go back to homepage link, and so now on the homepage, why don't we add the link to each post? So we have the link to each post. We're going to need to open up the posts partial. And so underneath the post content, we're going to need to do pretty much the same thing. So we're going to just do a div class comment link, and we'll do another link to. We'll call it, well, let's see what we should call it. This is why we have mockups. We'll call it leave a comment. Okay, and we're going to send that to the, what did we call it? We called it, I always forget these ones, the complex routes, the new post comment. And we're going to need to pass it the post ID as well. So we need new post comment path and pass it the post.id, or just post for short because Rails is smart. Okay, so now we have the comment link inside of a post. So we should be able to say .comment link, and we can do the same thing we did down here, text align right. And I don't even think we need to deal with any of the display block. I think that code for the other one is probably redundant. Okay, looks good. Leave a comment. All right, let's leave a comment on this post. Perfect. Oh, we've got a problem though. We're displaying leave a comment there. We'll take care of that in just a sec. At least we have the link between the two of them. Okay. So let's see what happens if I create a comment. Oh, well, we don't have an action create anyways in the comments controller, so why don't we do that? Let's set up a comments controller to create. Oops. So what we need to do is we're going to need to actually take that comment. We're going to need to pull the parameters out of it because remember this is Rails 4 we're working with. So we have to go grab our parameters. So it's going to do, let's just set up a method called comment params. And just because we're lazy, we're going to go in our posts controller and we're going to grab just the same string here because I can never remember how exactly that looks. So we have to whitelist our parameters. So we will do that. And so instead of requiring post, we're going to need to require comment. But these are the same fields because we've designed our comments awfully similarly to our posts. And so what we're going to have to do here, let's get a comment equals, oh, well, actually first why don't we grab our post because that's going to be fairly important, equals post.find params. And this is still going to be post ID because that's going to be outside of the parameters. And so what we're going to need to do is create a comment from that post. So that post.comments.new, actually let's do a create, and we'll call it comment params to grab them from the method down there at the bottom. Okay, so now if we've actually created a comment, let's redirect it back to the root. If not, let's just stay right where we are. Render new. So we won't do any more logic. I mean, you should be doing some error handling logic in there somewhere, but we won't do that because we are lazy. Boom. Okay, look at that. Somewhere in here we've got a comment. We can verify that by looking on the command line here. Let's do comment.last. Fast as. Yep, that looks about right. So the comment was created, but of course we're not displaying the comments. And so now we need to actually write the code to display those comments on the front end, on the post index. And so that is going to be, we're going to be displaying the comments on each individual post. So that means we know we need to go to the post partial there. So we've got the post partial, and at the very end of the content is going to be the comments section. So let's do div class equals comments. Div, but I've already been using that, so I don't want to go too crazy with messing up my namespaces. We'll just not have to think too hard here. So the very first thing we need is an H5 that says what? It's going to say comments, right? Oops, let me go find that mock-up here. So here we need that comments. And so we're going to set that up if I can ever find Sublime Text. Here we go. So this is comments H5, and we are good to go with that for now, but I think we should actually give this a class. and call it comment header. I mean, this is getting very lazy, but there were some stylings associated with that we'll get to in a little bit. Do this. Do it later. And then underneath each one, we're going to need to do we're going to actually need to render every comment that's on there right now. And so basically, we're going to want to find all the comments. So we have the post. Oops, it's not an at post. It's just a post. So we have the post.comments. And so what we can do is render post.comments. And so that should render us our collection. Okay, and so, missing partial. Comment/comment. Of course, we don't even have a partial set up for our comments. That's fine. Let's do it. Let's make a new one. We'll save it under comments because it's going to look for it in comments. So comment, oops, make sure we get an underscore because it's partial. Comment.html.erb. If I can type, that would be excellent. Okay, and why don't we set that up such that we get what? We'll do another H5 here for the author. So we'll set up the comment. Actually, you know what? Why don't, yeah. I'll just do a paragraph for now. So now what we need is the comment dot author. Oh, comment author goes at the bottom actually. So again, if we take a look back at our mockup, you can see that, oops, sorry, the wrong side. The Joe Smith down there, the author goes underneath each comment. So we need to set up a paragraph at the top. And we'll do comment dot content. And we'll kill the paragraph there. Here, let's just give this a class that we can hang on to. Comment, because this is an individual comment. Okay. And so now we've got that, and hopefully that'll be displaying for us properly. Okay, so here we go. Great, we've got the comments displaying properly. And so now what we need to do, though, is we have some formatting issues. So we can kind of bubble up to the front end. I know we should do it later, but you know what? Why don't we do it later? Because we do have a couple problems. You see, if we click over here, this should not be displaying the comment, the leave a comment link. And also, if we go back to the home page, this shouldn't even be here if there are no comments. So we just need to add a little bit of logic here. So we'll go back to our post where we're rendering this stuff, and if there are no comments, unless, let's see, let's do an if post.comments.empty. So if there are no comments, sorry, unless the comments are empty. So unless the comments are empty, we're good to go with all this stuff. So how about that? Okay, so we've at least gotten rid of that. So now, but we still have the same problem over here where we have that leave a comment link. And so in this case, what we can do is unless, or how about we, well, let's do if at comment.nil. So if we haven't actually set the comment, which only happens in the other section, then remember, we're only setting that instance variable when we're creating a new comment. We don't care about it over here. So right now we've got everything displaying fine. We have comments displaying if there are them, and we have nothing else if there aren't. Great. Okay. Okay, so right now let's do a quick optimization here. We don't want to be grabbing a post comments every single time without first preloading it. So we'll do a quick eager preload in the post controller, PC, post controller. So we're going to order them, and we're going to do includes comments, just to make our lives a little bit easier, faster. It's a good habit to get into, I think. Okay, so what we need to do now, finally, we're very close, is we need to add a little bit of styling around some things here. Most importantly, we've got these comments kind of off on their own, so let's take care of that. So what we have, let's go over to the comment. So div class comment, so why don't we just grab, comment is also going to be within a post. So let me line that up in here. So inside of a post, a comment is probably going to need to be bumped over, so we know that the margin left should probably be about 20 pixels. Let's call it 30 pixels, and we want to bump it down maybe a little bit too. Margin top 10 pixels, call it 15 pixels. Okay, so we've got that. That should bump that over and down. Good. Okay. And now, of course, we need the author. Class equals comment author. We need to bump that over to the right, as we said. Oh, and again, there needs to be a double dash in front of it. So we're going to do that. So we're going to take comment. We're going to do dot comment author. And we're going to send it to the right. Text align right. Great. We'll set the color. Set that to a nice light gray. What do you think? That's maybe even too dark. Let's do a CCC. Yeah, very gentle light gray. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And so what we have, I think that might be it actually. Okay, so we've still got to style this. It doesn't look quite ready yet. And so what we're going to do is, whoops, where are you? So what we're looking for is, in the post, we want comment header, the thing that we said we were going to do later. So that, by the way, is inside of a post as well. So we're going to do an H5, so we'll call it an H5.comment header. So as an H5, it's already going italic, but let's do text decoration underline. Okay, so we've got that. Great, we've got a text decoration underline, and okay. So I think that pretty much covers where we need to be. So we'll just review our functionality here. So we can create a new post by Eric the Red. I pillage things and like to sell. Create post. Great. Let's leave a comment on that post. Oh, we're still displaying nil comments, so that we know is a problem. So if comment.nil, it should not actually, if the comment is nil, so let's see, comments should be empty. So it shouldn't actually display that. But see, the problem we have is that the comments aren't empty. It's got that comment that we've created to set up the form. So it's basically that sort of like that half-created comment is currently screwing up because it thinks that there's a comment there, so it's going to display these things. But what we can do is, let's see, what we want to do is if there's a new record, if the comment is a new record, we definitely don't want to be displaying that field. Post.comments.empty. So if it's empty, or if the last comment is a new record, at comment.newRecord. So it hasn't been persisted to the database. So that's very interesting. Okay, great. So that works though. Oh, but apparently not, because it's a nil class. All right, so I think I had something that was quite functional for this before, but it doesn't seem like I'm thinking it through at the moment. Okay, actually, why don't we forget about is. I don't think that was a very good idea. So why don't we do it inside the comment partial here instead? So we'll actually, we only want to display a comment if, let's see, if unless the comment is a new record. That makes a little bit more sense. Let's go back to here. So we have that, leave a comment. Comments, it has no comments. I don't like that it says comments though, regardless. But I think that might be one thing that we just live with for now. No, yeah, let's just live with that for now. And so basically, I think that we've pretty much got things covered here. I mean, let's just take a quick peek over our mockup. Let's just make sure that I can create a comment. Again, Eric, the yellow, I do yellow commenting. Let's leave another one, another dude. Yo, man, I'm a comment again. Okay, here we go. Yep, we've got some comments. Perfect. Let's leave a comment. And here's something that I don't like. We've actually lost our border here, and we've lost our formatting. So let me see. Yeah, so what is the problem with that? So if we go to add a comment, yeah, the whole thing is just fallen down. So let me see if I can figure out why we've lost that. We've lost everything we wanted here. So we've got a new row is a post. Where did our formatting go? I think something might have gotten caught up here. Might have an end. Post. Oh, okay. Okay, so I think I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on, so let me see. Okay, so that was an oversight coming from over here. That's what that was. So, oops. So this needs to actually be posts. Problem with copy pasting code and then changing a whole bunch of stuff. So now this actually works. Now we've got the formatting that we wanted here. So other than that, I'd say that everything looks as we want it to. This isn't, you know, the final draft here, but I think that pretty much covers the story. Okay, so now we're at the end. As you can see, we've got ourselves a fully functional app here. It's, you know, it lacks a little bit of polish around the edges, but it's pretty much all we've set out to accomplish here today. And so, you know, hopefully as you've been following along, you've been able to see that we started with, you know, the figuring out what the data structure was. We walked through building the models themselves, and that kind of every time you could see that would iterate up through the front end. We'd end up doing some CSS, and now would be the point where we'd normally, at the end of this story here, we would do a refactoring and iteration cycle where we'd take a look at all the code and see what could be replaced and made better, because there always are things, and there certainly are in the junky code I just wrote. but that's just I'm gonna skip that for today. And so at this point we're done with the story, and so what we would normally do here is we would do a get. So actually what I'm going to do is a little bit different, just because I don't want to be too crazy with these changes. I'm just going to put it on a separate branch here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit my changes, get commit, finish story about comments. We'll just leave it like that. So now I've committed my changes. So that's an important step, and normally I would also deliver my changes, but so on Pivotal Tracker, what I would do is I would deliver the story, it would be accepted by my boss, and now we're back. So we're done with the story, we're done with the last story, and so now all we have left to do is ship it, and as we saw, the app looks pretty good the way it is. It would just basically be a 2-click thing to send it up to Heroku and deploy it to the real web. And so I'm not going to display that right now because it's just a little bit too straightforward. And I'm also rather lazy at the moment. But so where we go from here is, I think it makes sense to at least take a look back at where we've been. Like I said, you should have at least had a chance to take a look at a full workflow from start to finish. We started with the user needs, we started with our user needs, our friends who wanted a blogging platform. We turned that into a mockup, which again you could see in the balsamic mockups. We turned that mockup into a series of stories, which we can now see on Pivotal Tracker. Those stories, each individual story we built. In particular, we took the example story, we used the mockup as kind of a target, and then we whiteboarded the data architecture that we wanted. We bubbled up from the data up into the backend, building the Rails models, up into the controllers, and ultimately the views, and set up the CSS that we needed to make those things look good. And normally we would also iterate at the end of every story. And once all the stories were completed, we'd ship the app. So hopefully that's been helpful to you. I mean, I showed a whole lot of stuff. It's probably been too fast for some and too slow for others. Ideally, it's kind of halfway in between those cases. And you've at least gotten a chance to see a whole lot of new stuff. And I hope that what you really take away from it is kind of remembering some of the terms and some of the things that we've used along the way. But ultimately, I just want you to be curious. And like this is a whole lot of stuff to learn, but it's also very doable. And I hope that at least being able to see someone do it, even if it's kind of a contrived example, has given you the idea that that you can do it as well, and also the curiosity to go out and start tackling some of this stuff. And that's basically what the next few lessons, the next few courses, and ultimately the intensive program are all about, is teaching you these things to the level where you can be fully comfortable with them and go out and build all your own apps as well. So I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if there's anything that I could improve, or that we could that we could do better with the whole process here, with the demo or the delivery. And other than that, though, just good luck with everything. I think I'm losing my voice. And happy coding.